The sky was burning. Flames rose where once there were cities filled with life. Great towers of steel fell like candles in the wind. People ran through the streets, but there was no safe place left on earth. The air shook with thunder, not of storms, but of weapons from above. The attackers came without warning. They did not send words, they did not speak. They came like a shadow, like a tide of fire. Their ships were black against the stars, vast and endless, and they rained destruction upon every land. It was not a battle, it was a hunt. Humanity had no chance. Soldiers fired weapons from the ground, but their fire was nothing against the walls of alien steel. Planes rose into the sky, brave pilots pushing into the storm, but one by one they burned, falling back to the earth in fire. Families hid in basements, praying to gods, but the heat of the war reached them all. No nation was spared. Cities of the east, cities of the west, all fell in the same fire. The oceans boiled red with wreckage. Earth was dying, and humanity watched with tears and fury. In the heart of the chaos, in the middle of this storm, there were those who still lived. A boy stood at the window of a broken house, watching the sky fall. His mother pulled him away, but his eyes stayed on the burning heavens. He did not understand why this was happening, but he knew one thing. They had come to end humanity. Yet somewhere else, far from the burning streets, deep inside hidden mountains and forgotten bases, there were ships. They were not strong, not beautiful. They were built in secret, with old metal and desperate hands. They were not warships. They were lifeboats. A plan made long ago, by leaders who feared one day something like this would come. As Earth burned, those ships became the last hope. Crowds pushed toward them, crying, begging to enter. Not all could go. Many stayed behind, watching the sky for death. The lucky ones, or perhaps the cursed ones, climbed aboard. The engines roared, heavy and slow, but they lifted into the fire. Alien ships saw them rise and moved to strike, but not all were caught. Some escaped, racing into the black void of space, leaving Earth behind. The people on board wept as they looked back. They saw their world, their home, the cradle of all their stories, covered in smoke. Oceans glittered with flame. Continents glowed red. Earth was no longer blue, but broken. They burned our homes, the people whispered. They thought we would kneel. Yet in their tears there was something else, something burning brighter than fire. Rage. Not wild, empty rage, but the kind that does not die. The kind that waits. The kind that remembers. Humanity was wounded, humanity was scattered, but humanity was not finished. In the silence of space, in the hearts of those who escaped, a promise was born. One day they would return. One day the stars would know that humans were not prey. They would rise again. They would rise like dragons among the stars. And in that moment, as the last ship crossed the edge of Earth's shadow, the story of humanity's rebirth began. The ships drifted in the cold black sea of space, carrying the last children of Earth. Inside them there was no comfort, only silence broken by the hum of engines and the cries of those who had lost everything. Men and women sat close together, holding their children, holding the memories of a world that no longer lived. They had escaped, but it did not feel like victory. It felt like running from the grave. Food was short, water was measured drop by drop, and air itself seemed too thin. They were alive, but survival had a price, and every soul could feel it. Among them, a leader rose. He was not a king, not a soldier of legend, not a man of riches. He was an ordinary human, once a farmer of quiet fields, now carrying the voice of those who had no strength left to speak. His name mattered little, for what mattered was his courage. He stood in the center of the largest ship, his face marked by smoke and sorrow, and he spoke so all could hear. He told them that they had lost Earth, but they had not lost what made them human. He said the fire that had consumed their cities would not consume their spirit. He said they could bend, but they would never break. The people listened, and in their tired eyes a spark returned. They needed more than food. They needed hope. And hope was born in his words. That day the survivors made an oath. They raised their hands, young and old, rich and poor, and swore together that humanity would not die in the dark. They would carry the memory of Earth into the stars. They would rebuild, no matter how long it took. And when the day came, they would answer the ones who had burned their homes. The oath was not written on paper, nor carved in stone. It was carved in their hearts, passed from parent to child, from friend to friend, whispered in the silence of the ships. It was their fire in the cold, their shield in the dark. As the ships drifted, they searched for safe worlds, places hidden from alien eyes. Some planets were barren rock, others frozen wastelands. Many times they thought they had found a home, but each time the sky would burn again with shadows of. Life in the void was hard, but humanity endured. The survivors lived on metal ships, moving from star to star, never resting too long, always fearing the shadow of alien patrols. Inside the ships there was no green earth, no rivers, no open sky. Children grew up without ever feeling rain, without ever touching grass, knowing only the cold walls of steel and the endless darkness outside. Food came from machines, recycled and rationed, water was measured like treasure, and every breath reminded them they were alive only because the engines still burned. Yet in this darkness, something new was being born. Humans were learning to live not as scattered nations, but as one people. Old borders no longer mattered. There was no east, no west, no north or south. There were only survivors, united by loss and by the oath they had sworn. Engineers and builders worked side by side, turning scraps of metal and stolen parts into tools of survival. They learned to shape the emptiness of space into their forge. At first they built only to live, repairing broken engines, patching torn hulls, creating farms of light where small plants grew in glass chambers. But as time passed, they began to build something greater. They remembered the oath, they remembered the fire that had taken Earth, and they remembered the rage that burned quietly inside them. They knew they could not run forever. So in the hidden corners of their fleet, in secret halls where sparks flew and hammers rang, humanity began to create weapons. Not ordinary weapons, not simple ships of steel. They created something new, something born from both memory and dream. They shaped the bodies of their warships to look like dragons, the old legends of Earth, beasts of fire and flight that had once filled human stories with awe and fear. These ships were more than machines. They were symbols. To the survivors, the dragon ships were hope made into metal. They would fly with wings of flame, they would strike with the fire of stars, and they would remind the enemy that humans were not prey. The work was slow, the cost was heavy, and many times it seemed impossible. There were arguments, there was doubt, for some said they should spend their strength only on survival. But the builders did not stop. Piece by piece, day by day, the dragons took shape in the void. Children watched from the windows as massive forms grew, glowing under welding sparks, their frames spreading like wings across the dark. The first time a completed dragon ship powered its engines, the fleet shook with pride. Its eyes glowed red, its body covered in armored scales of steel, and from its mouth roared streams of light that burned like fire. For the first time since Earth fell, humanity felt not only fear, but strength. They had created something the enemy did not expect. The aliens thought the humans were broken, scattered dust in the wind. But hidden in the emptiness, humans were changing. They were no longer the hunted, they were becoming hunters. The oath of survival was turning into the promise of revenge. And as the dragon ships slept in the silence of space, waiting for their time, a message spread through the fleet, whispered in every corner, spoken with quiet fire: "We are still here. We will not kneel. We will rise again. And when we rise, we will rise as dragons among the stars." The silence of the void did not last forever. For many years humanity hid among the stars, building their dragon ships in secret, whispering their oath in the dark. But shadows move even in silence, and the enemy did not forget. One day a fleet of alien patrol ships passed near the hidden paths of the survivors. Their black hulls glowed with cruel lights, scanning the darkness for any sign of life. The humans watched them from afar, hearts filled with fear, for they knew their secret might soon be found. The council of leaders gathered and argued. Some said they must run again, hide deeper into space, save their children at any cost. Others said if they ran again they would always run, until nothing was left. The dragons had been built for this day, and the oath demanded courage. The debate was fierce, but in the end the choice was made. They would not run. They would fight. The first battle since Earth's fall began in silence. The alien patrol ships moved closer, unaware of what waited for them. Hidden behind the shadow of a dead moon, the first dragon ships came alive. Their eyes glowed in the dark, their wings spread wide, their engines roared like storms. The humans inside them trembled, but their hands were steady, for they knew this moment would decide more than their lives. If they lost, humanity's fire would be gone forever. If they won, a new chapter would begin. The alien ships scanned the moon, their weapons ready, when suddenly fire erupted from the shadows. A dragon ship surged forward, its mouth opening to unleash a stream of burning plasma that cut across the void like lightning. The aliens were caught unprepared. One of their ships split apart, glowing red before it broke into pieces. For the first time since the invasion, alien voices filled the void not with commands but with alarm. The humans did not cheer, they did not celebrate, they only pressed harder. More dragon ships rose from the shadows, each one attacking with fire and fury. The aliens responded quickly, their weapons slashing across the dark, striking against the steel scales of the dragons. Some human ships fell, their fire dying in silence, but they did not fall in vain. Every loss gave strength to the others. Every scream turned into fuel for their rage. The battle was fierce, faster than breath, brighter than lightning. Dragons roared in the void, and alien ships cracked under the weight of human defiance. In the end, the patrol fleet was broken, their survivors fleeing into the black to carry the news. Humanity had revealed itself. The secret was gone. The leaders knew the enemy would return, stronger and angrier than before. Yet in their hearts there was no regret. For the first time since the fall of Earth, they had not been prey. They had stood and fought, and they had won. The oath had been tested, and it had lived. The children of Earth looked to the stars with new eyes. They were no longer only survivors. They were warriors. They were the keepers of dragons forged in the void. And as the fleet prepared for what would come, one truth spread across every ship, whispered in every corridor, spoken by every soul who remembered the burning of Earth. The shadows have returned, but this time we are ready. The enemy did not wait long. The broken patrol ships had carried the warning across the stars, and soon a larger fleet came, vast and armed with the power that had once burned Earth. From the windows of the human ships the survivors saw their return, a sea of black vessels glowing with cold fire, spreading across the void like a storm. Fear moved through the fleet, but alongside fear was something new, something that had been born in the first battle. It was not the fear of prey but the sharpened edge of hunters ready to strike. The dragon ships, hidden for so long, were now prepared to rise in full. Their wings spread wide, their scales glowing under the light of nearby stars, and their engines burned with the fury of a people who refused to kneel. The leaders gave no speech this time, for none was needed. Every man, woman, and child aboard the fleet already knew the truth. This was the moment when the oath would be carried into fire. When the alien fleet arrived, they expected broken refugees, but what they found was a storm of dragons rising from the void. The first clash was thunder without sound, light without mercy. Dragon ships roared forward in formation, their mouths pouring streams of blazing plasma that cut into alien armor. The enemy fired back, their weapons tearing through the blackness, turning the sky into a web of fire. Ships exploded, both human and alien, but the battle was no longer one-sided. Humanity fought with skill, with cunning, with the will of those who had nothing left to lose. A dragon ship dove between two alien cruisers, twisting with impossible precision, then unleashed its fire so bright that both enemy vessels shattered at once. Another dragon spread its wings wide, covering the retreat of smaller ships, its armor glowing red as it took blow after blow until its engines finally went dark. Even in death, the humans fought like legends. The aliens began to realize that this was not the same prey they had hunted before. These were creatures of iron and flame, creatures that remembered every scream of their dying world and carried it as fuel for their fire. For the first time, fear touched the hearts of the invaders. The battle raged for hours, a dance of light and shadow across the endless night. The humans used not only strength but also clever tactics. They lured alien ships into asteroid fields where dragons waited in ambush. They shut down their engines to play dead, then struck like lightning when the enemy moved close. Every trick, every piece of wisdom, every drop of courage was thrown into the fight. And slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. Alien ships fell one by one, their wreckage drifting like dark scars across the stars. The human fleet, though scarred and bleeding, still held together, and the dragons still roared. In the command ship, the leader who once had been only a farmer stood silent, watching the battle unfold, his face hard but his eyes burning with pride. He whispered to himself the oath they had sworn, and now he saw it living in fire before his eyes. The dragons were no longer dreams. They were real, and they were rising. When the last alien cruiser broke apart and the survivors of the enemy fled into the dark, the humans did not cheer loudly. Their voices were quiet, but their silence was stronger than any cry. They knew the war was far from over. The enemy would return again with greater numbers, with greater fury. But they also knew something else, something even the aliens had now learned. Humanity had risen. Humanity had turned its pain into steel, its rage into fire, and its memory into wings. They were no longer only survivors hiding in the shadows. They were dragons among the stars. The stars had changed. Once they were only cold lights in the dark, reminders of how small and broken humanity had become, but now they shone like paths leading to something greater. After the battle where the dragons first rose, the survivors no longer saw themselves as weak. Their oath had been tested in fire, and their victory, though costly, had given them strength. The fleet was scarred, their ships damaged, their people weary, yet hope moved among them like a living flame. Word spread through the hidden colonies, whispered on old channels, carried from ship to ship, humanity was fighting back. At first no one believed it. How could the broken ones, the scattered children of a burned earth, stand against the ones who had conquered them so easily? But when survivors from the battle spoke, when fragments of alien wreckage were shown, when the glow of dragonfire was seen across the void, doubt turned to awe. More colonies that had hidden in silence began to rise. Broken ships were repaired, old stations were awakened, and people who had once accepted death now began to prepare for war. The dragons had become a symbol, not just of strength, but of unity. Across the stars, humans no longer asked if survival was possible. They asked when they would take back what was theirs. The aliens noticed. Their fleets grew larger, their hunts more furious, but for every strike they made, they met resistance sharper than before. No longer did humans scatter like dust. Instead, they struck from shadows, ambushed patrols, and defended colonies with dragonfire. Slowly, piece by piece, humanity began to take back what had been lost. Broken mining stations, once abandoned, now roared back to life under human flags. Small moons that had been hiding places turned into fortresses. With every victory, no matter how small, the oath grew stronger. Children whispered it before sleep, fighters carried it into battle, leaders spoke it in council. Humanity would not kneel. Humanity would rise. And as the dragons flew from world to world, their wings burning bright against the void, even other species began to notice. Some watched with fear, remembering how quickly humans had turned from prey into predators. Others watched with hope, wondering if perhaps these dragons of fire and steel could also fight for them. Whispers of alliance reached human ears, but the leaders were careful, for trust was dangerous in a galaxy where betrayal could mean extinction. Still, the tide was turning, and all could see it. Yet victory came at a price. Every battle cost lives. Every step forward left scars. Families wept for those who never returned, and the weight of war grew heavy. But the humans carried it, as they always had, because the memory of Earth burned brighter than the pain of loss. They remembered the oceans boiling, the cities falling, the sky torn apart by fire, and they swore no child would ever see such horror again. The dragons had become more than weapons. They were guardians, protectors of a people who refused to vanish. The aliens came again and again, But each time their losses grew heavier, and each time their fear grew sharper. In their high councils they whispered about humanity with unease, asking how such a broken race could rise so quickly. They called them stubborn, reckless, dangerous. But deep in their hearts they knew the truth. The humans were becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. And as the tide of war shifted, as dragons claimed the night sky above lost colonies, as the survivors of Earth stood together as one people, the promise of their oath burned brighter than ever. They had been broken, but now they were rising. And nothing in the stars could stop what was coming next. The final war had come. Across the stars the enemy gathered, their fleets larger than anything humanity had ever faced, stretching across the black like an endless wall of fire and steel. The alien commanders believed this would be the end, the moment when the humans would finally be crushed, their dragons broken, their oath silenced forever. But humanity did not tremble. The survivors of Earth had waited for this day, had prepared for it in silence and pain, had forged their rage into fire and their sorrow into steel. From hidden docks and secret forges the dragons rose, greater in number than ever before, their wings spread wide, their scales glowing under the light of distant suns. The fleet moved as one, not scattered and broken as it once had been, but united, bound by the memory of a burning Earth and the promise they had sworn in the dark. The battle began with silence, then the void exploded in light. Alien weapons tore through the stars, carving through space with fire, but the dragons answered with roars of their own. Streams of blazing plasma cut into the enemy lines, and the clash shook the galaxy. Human ships twisted through the storm, striking with speed and cunning, each move guided by desperation and courage. For every dragon that fell, two more struck harder, carrying the fight deeper into the enemy fleet. The aliens had numbers, but the humans had something stronger. They had the will to rise no matter the cost. The leader, once a farmer of Earth's quiet fields, now stood in the command deck of the greatest dragon, his voice calm but fierce as he guided his people. He reminded them of their oath, that they fought not only for survival but for every soul who had burned in the fires of Earth, for every child born in the cold of space, for every dream of a future without chains. The humans pressed forward, closer and closer to the alien homeworld, the heart of the empire that had once thought itself untouchable. The aliens fought with fury, unleashing weapons of unimaginable power, tearing apart stars themselves to stop the advance, but still the dragons came. They moved through fire as if born for it, their wings glowing brighter with every strike. The battle was chaos, light and shadow colliding, but slowly the tide shifted. Human tactics, their endless courage, and their refusal to yield broke through the wall of the enemy. Dragons swarmed across the enemy's capital defenses, tearing apart their greatest ships, burning their fortresses until the sky above their world glowed red. For the first time the invaders felt what Earth had once felt. Their sky was burning, their cities trembling, their people crying in fear. The leader's voice carried across the fleet, steady as stone, declaring that humanity would never again kneel. With one final strike the dragons unleashed their fire, a storm of blazing plasma that shattered the last of the enemy's defenses and lit the alien world in the glow of defeat. Silence followed, not the silence of death but the silence of victory. Humanity had done the impossible. From the ashes of their burned home they had risen higher than the stars, fiercer than fire, stronger than fear. They had become dragons among the stars, and the galaxy would never forget it. Yet even in victory the humans did not lose themselves. They did not destroy the innocent, they did not conquer without thought. They remembered their pain, and they swore no other world would suffer as Earth had suffered. Their victory was not only revenge, it was rebirth. And as the dragons circled above the broken fleets, as the survivors of Earth looked to the horizon of stars ahead, one truth lived in every heart: this was not the end. It was the beginning of a new age. Humanity had ascended, and the galaxy would now rise or fall in the shadow of their wings.